And he remembered being on an exam table where the creature or the humanoid, whatever it was, I guess it was a female type, was trying to put her fingers or whatever they were down his throat and come out his nose. And he said that was a horrible feeling, like he thought he was dying. But he got the impression, at least whatever abducted Calvin Parker, I asked him, I said, what type of a feeling did you get? Did you feel like they were friendly towards men? And he said that he felt they were evil.
Yeah. And a lot of people do. I get a lot of people that tell me that, that they feel evil presence and stuff like that, where I didn't get that sensation, still to this day. Matter of fact, I've been wanting them to come back and see me, forever and a day, and they'd be at the return, But I do get subliminal messages at times that I can't explain, and certain answers to questions that, like you'll think of a question, and then all of a sudden, bam, the answer will just come to you from out of the blue, things that I should never know, you know what I mean? There's strange things like that. Numbers is another thing that I have a problem with. I'm all the time seeing 111 or 111 or 222 or 222, 2222 or 4444, things like that. They're always in sequence. Every time I see, like a clock, it's a constant thing with that, just weird stuff like that, it's constantly, happening. And I talk about it a lot, but what the meanings are, I have no idea,
Well,
you speculate.
You might, it could happen one day. An asteroid at 244 might just slam into Earth, and that 44 was part of, the time frame they were trying to give you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you just never know.
Yeah, I've talked.
And what's funny, I was going to say what's funny about it is you go online, excuse me, and there's all kind of websites that give you definitions of these numbers and different things like that. And I'm thinking to myself, now, how do they know this? The meanings of what the numbers mean or whatever. How is it that they know this and I don't, or whatever. So I don't know.
Well, maybe one day you'll have that answer. I got to ask you a question. When I started out in broadcasting, and especially around the 80s, people were talking about the size of UFOs were like 80 to 75, 100 feet in diameter. Mm-hmm. Now, some of the reports that were coming in, because for a while we had Peter Davenport on our network, like every Saturday for a half an hour, talking about reports from the National UFO Reporting Center across the country. And then also some of the guests I've had on my show that claimed that they saw UFOs, they weren't 75 or 50 or 100 feet. They're talking about they were huge. And lately, the reports I've been seeing is people claiming that some of these UFOs are as big as, I'm glad you're sitting down. They're saying as big as a Walmart store.
Mm-hmm.
And, triangle, huge. And they seem like they're there one moment and the next minute they're cloaked and they're gone. Now, have you been hearing any of those reports on your end, too, doing your podcast?
Well, it's funny because I do hear reports like that. Yes, absolutely. One of the biggest ones, of course, a lot of people remember was the Phoenix Lights. And that was a V-shaped craft. And it covered 3 football fields, I think it was, something like that, that size. Now, I'm not talking about the lights that were lined up in a line and, they seen over the stadium, but I'm talking about the ones that, had come across the state of Arizona itself and made its way down through, the one that the governor finally admitted that he seen, later on or whatever.
Uh-huh.
But, that one was a pretty good-sized ship. And, of course, there was other ones here not too long ago. People claim that they walked out and all of a sudden the stars were disappearing, and then they realized it was a UFO over top of them because the night just got so dark, and they were actually looking at the bottom of the ship. and it took the ship like 2 minutes to go from one end to the other before the sky cleared again, you know. So, you know, when you're talking that, that's pretty damn big, you know.
Oh, it is. And,
you know?
and again, too, let's face it, we don't know what type of humanoids they could be from where they're coming from.
Absolutely not.
You know, they have supposedly found skeletons of giants that were 15, 20 feet tall here, you know, on our planet. Could you imagine if there was a race of 20-some foot aliens? They're not going to be in a 75 or 50-foot craft, are they?
No, that's true. They're going to be in the biggest craft you can imagine. I mean, it'd be like Andre the Giant driving a Pinto Ford, okay, a Ford Pinto. It's not going to happen.
He's not even going to get into it.
You know, it's going to be in the biggest Cadillac you've ever seen. So, you know, absolutely. Yeah.
Well, you know, my friend who's no longer here, Art, you know, he talked to me numerous times about his sighting, him and Lamona saw, you know, out of his property. If it kind of like flew by, it made no noise, a triangle craft, and he said it was humongous, huge. He said it was about the size of a football field. And it just kind of went by real slow without making any noise. And, you know, it just makes you wonder. There's all kinds of different reports. And again, I think we're being visited certainly by more than one race of aliens.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely we are. You know it. And here's the funny thing about it too. And people got to really kind of think outside the box a little bit when it comes to things like this. But, you know, people have this illusion all the time that these ships and that have to come from galaxies far, far away and light years away and, you know, blah, blah, blah. Well, you know, just in our solar system alone, each planet, almost, not every planet, but 90% of our own planets have other moons that circle them. And with all of these celestial objects that we have around us in our own solar system, they're really not that far away, you know? So they're a lot closer than you think.
And also, you know, scientists talk about portals, but it's just recently they saw something come out of a black hole. They've never seen anything come out of a black hole. And all of a sudden here back a couple months ago, they had whatever they captured, an object coming out of a black hole. So who knows? Maybe they use a black hole to go from one end to whatever. I mean, I don't know where they're coming from. You know, again, I get some of these people that come on my show and they said, well, you know, this is it. What you see in the sky is it. And I said, okay, you trying to tell me that at the end of our solar system, they put a brick wall up? And the guy goes, pretty much the same thing. I said, well, doesn't a brick wall, is that going to take space? Is that brick wall going to go on and on and on? So who knows how many different solar systems, how many, you know, galaxies they are, and, you know, how they're getting here. You know, it was just like 100 years ago, you know, we didn't even have airplanes.
That's right. Absolutely.
And now,
but yet people were still seeing flying objects.
But our technology is only advanced in 100 years from, you know, basically the Wright brothers to our, you know, what we have now. Our technology is rather slow. So, I mean, can you imagine a race of aliens 10,000 or 100,000 years advanced of us? I mean, we couldn't even comprehend what they would even think.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And not to mention the ones that may even live here on Earth that, you know, like in the oceans or, you know, in some of these Great Lakes or whatever, you know, they come here and they hide, you know, whatever. And they live for a while and then they leave and another one comes back and replaces it or whatever, you know, however they do it. But, yeah, I mean, they're here. They've always been here. And they're always going to be here. You know, that's just the way it is, you know.
Oh, yeah.
But that's my opinion now. That you don't have to believe that, but that's, you know.
Well, I will say this. I had a guest on maybe 10 months ago. He wrote a book about Aurora. in Texas, where that around the 1900s or 1890s, I can't remember the date, where the UFO supposedly crashed into a water tower. And anyway, he wrote a book about it. But talking to him, we found out his father in the town, and I can't remember if it was the Midwest or down south. His father worked for a police department as a dispatcher at night. And they got a phone call, and they thought, it was a prank call. And what happened is a report was that UFO landed in the hospital parking lot. So, the time they called one of their cops, and they probably got his pants on, got in his patrol car at night, and got into the hospital. There was no UFO there. But there was like about a 75-foot, 80-foot roughly diameter of the parking lot that had a ring around it. It was still burning and smoking. And I guess when they got there, they examined it. It was like droplets of mercury around it. Now, two things that was really funny. The police, and I did verify his story by getting a hold of the local library. And yes, they brought up that, during that the 60s, there was a reported UFO that's supposed to land there. It landed there. But the next day, 30 miles away from that location, there was a report of a UFO coming out of a lake. There was witnesses seen it coming out of a lake and took off. Now, my feeling is maybe that UFO overheated or had some type of mechanical issue. It had to touch down for a minute, and then it kind of took back off and limped to where it found a body of water and went into it to make its repair or to cool down. Absolutely. Sure. Why not? Absolutely. Very well could have happened. And there's a lot of reports of, encounters of UFOs coming out of bodies of water. Yep, I totally agree with that, too. Now, the Aurora incident that you're talking about that happened in the 1800s down in Aurora, Texas, Jim Morris, I don't know if you remember him or not, he died here just a few short years ago. He did a big documentary about that. And he actually went to the cemetery where they buried the body of the alien that they had found. And they found the actual grave and the marker. And when they announced, that they were doing this documentary and that they had found the grave marker and all this stuff, they had left and was doing their thing, and then they came back, to do some more like ground radar or whatever. And somebody had taken the marker and had moved everything, and they couldn't find it again. And I think there was a reason behind that. Also, the story was too that they took the remains of that UFO and dumped it into a well type of thing. Into a well, yes, that's right. And then they put now there's a concrete pad over it with a small building on top of it. And the old farmer that actually bought that property had so bad of arthritis that if you ever look at pictures of his hands, you don't know how he could ever have moved his fingers. They were just like elephantitis. They were nasty, just nasty. And he claimed that it was from the water from that well, Now, there is a backstory to this, and a lot of people don't know this. But if you actually, and I can send you this later on, Gary, if you like. But please do. The backstory to this is there was a group out of California of hot air balloon people, believe it or not, back in that day, when there wasn't supposed to be any kind of hot air balloons, whatever. But there was sightings of this particular craft that went from, I believe, mid-California, somewhere along that area, and they tracked it all the way across the United States, right down this path and right through Aurora, Texas, just like the sighting that happened when this thing crashed. So the story goes that this is what this particular UFO was supposed to have been, was one of these newfangled or a new airship that was built, by this
group of people, and they say that that's what the crash was, and yada yada yada.